when the gods still walked among the sands, and love was stronger than death itself, there was a queen who defied the silence of the tomb. Her name was Isis the goddess, who wept the Nile into life, and rebuilt a god from the dust of eternity. In the beginning, when the breath of creation still lingered upon the waters of the Nile, Isis was born among the first divine children of Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. She was radiant wise beyond the measure of gods, and gentle as the whisper of dawn. Her eyes carried the shimmer of hidden stars, and her heart was a vessel of endless devotion. Among all the gods, she alone sought not dominion, but harmony. She desired to bind together what chaos tore apart. Beside her stood Osiris, her beloved brother and consort, the green-skinned god of life and resurrection. Together they ruled Egypt in its golden age, teaching humankind the sacred arts: how to sow the earth, to measure the flood, to honor the spirits. Under their reign, the land blossomed, and men called them not gods of power, but gods of mercy. But where light reigns, shadow stirs. From the depths of envy arose Set, the red god of storm and desert, brother to Osiris and Isis alike. His heart was iron, his soul restless. He looked upon Osiris and saw not kin but rival. He gazed upon Isis and saw not sister but the love he could never claim. So he plotted, weaving hatred into the fabric of destiny. One night, under the dark eye of the moon, Set invited Osiris to a grand feast in his honor. The wine flowed, the laughter echoed among the pillars of the palace. Then Set unveiled a magnificent chest, carved with cedar and gold, shaped perfectly to fit the body of Osiris. He spoke with false reverence, bidding each guest to lie within, testing its comfort. One by one, the gods tried, and each time the chest was too long, too short, too narrow. But when Osiris entered, the lid closed with a perfect seal. In that instant, Set's laughter turned to thunder. He and his followers poured molten lead upon the chest, sealing it forever. With triumphant cries, they carried it to the Nile and cast it into the current. The river, once sacred, roared with grief as it bore the coffin away. Thus the world lost its king, and darkness crept over Egypt. When Isis learned of this treachery, her cry shook heaven itself. The winds mourned, the Nile fell silent, and the stars dimmed their light. She tore her garments and set forth across the earth, wandering in sorrow but not in despair. For she was the goddess of life, and life bows to none, not even death. She traveled through mountains and marshes, her feet never resting, guided by the faint pulse of Osiris that still whispered through the world. The birds of the air pitied her. They lent her their wings. The spirits of the land wept for her. They carried her voice. Finally, after long wandering, she found the chest lodged within the branches of a tamarisk tree near Byblus. The tree had grown around it, embracing it like a heart enclosing a secret. Isis disguised herself as a mortal woman and served the queen of Byblus as a nursemaid. Her presence blessed the household. The fragrance of eternity followed her. When she revealed her divinity, the people trembled in awe, and she claimed the chest with the queen's blessing. With her treasure reclaimed, she returned to Egypt, hiding it among the papyrus reeds of the Nile Delta. But Set's spies saw all. One night, as Isis slept, he found the chest and tore it open in a frenzy of rage. With his cruel blade, he hacked the body of Osiris into 14 pieces and scattered them across the land. So no resurrection could ever come. When Isis awoke to the dawn, her heart broke anew, her resolve hardened like stone. For love that is divine does not yield to despair. She began her search once more, traveling the length of Egypt. Through desert and floodplain she went, calling upon gods and spirits, upon falcons and crocodiles, upon the wind itself. Wherever she found a fragment of Osiris, an arm, a leg, a rib, she wrapped it in linen, anointed it with oils, and wept her sacred tears upon it. Each tear became a lotus, each lamentation a hymn of power. Thus the Nile rose in sorrow, flooding its banks, granting life to the fields. The people came to know that the flooding was Isis's grief, made visible divine mourning turned to blessing. When she had gathered all but one part, the sacred phallus, devoured by the fish of the Nile, Isis shaped it anew from gold and sacred clay, completing the body with her divine art. Then she called upon her sister Nephthys and the jackal-headed Anubis, guardian of the dead. Together they performed the first rite of mummification, wrapping the god in the cloth of eternity. Their voices wove the first incantations. Their hands formed the first symbols of resurrection. And as the stars turned above, Isis knelt beside the body she had rebuilt. She whispered his name with such love that the air itself began to tremble. Her wings spread wide, shimmering with the light of dawn. She fanned the breath of life upon Osiris's lips, and for a heartbeat, silence reigned over creation. Then came the miracle. Osiris stirred. His eyes opened green with the hue of life eternal. The god who had been murdered rose once more, not as king of the living, but as lord of the dead, ruler of the underworld, judge of souls. The first resurrection in all creation had come to pass, born of a woman's love. From their sacred union was conceived Horus, the falcon child, destined to avenge his father and restore balance to the world. Thus, through Isis, life triumphed over death, and the divine order was renewed. But the tale did not end with joy alone, for Isis's heart remained forever divided, half in the realm of the living, half in the shadowed Duat, where her beloved reigned. Every dawn she watched the rising sun and felt the ache of separation, yet she smiled, knowing that her love had rewritten the laws of the cosmos. Her name became a hymn whispered by priests, a charm on every mother's lips, a symbol of eternal devotion. Mortals carved her image upon temples' wings outstretched, an ankh in her hand, and a throne upon her brow. To the hearts of men, she was no longer distant divinity. She was the hope that love endures even beyond the grave. Ages passed, empires fell, and new gods arose, but none could erase the memory of Isis, for she was not merely the goddess who rebuilt her husband's body. She was the weaver of life itself, the mother of kings, the guardian of the Nile, and the first to prove that death is but a veil. And so, when the sun sets upon the desert and the river turns gold, the faithful say her tears still fall into its waters. They rise each year as the flood, carrying her love across the land, reminding all that no force, not time, not hatred, not the darkness of death can destroy what is bound by eternity. From the broken body of a god, Isis built the memory of immortality. Her tears became rivers, her faith became law, her love became legend. In her, the world learned that the divine is not only in power but in devotion, in grief, in the endless will to heal what has been torn apart. Thus she remains, forever beside the Nile, forever whispering to the wind. Love never dies, it only changes form. Love that conquers death is not born of mortal hearts, it is the pulse of creation itself. And in the endless silence between life and afterlife, it was Isis who taught the universe how to breathe again. The world was still trembling from the miracle of Osiris's resurrection, yet peace was a fragile thing. Isis had brought her beloved back from death, but his return came at a cost that only the gods could bear. Osiris no longer belonged to the land of the living. His place was now in Duat, the underworld, where the souls of men were judged. It was there he would reign, guiding the spirits through the fields of eternity, his throne surrounded by the stars of the unseen world. For Isis, this truth was both triumph and torment. She had defeated death itself, yet lost the warmth of her husband's embrace. Her heart, torn by divine paradox, became the bridge between the realms, half beating in the sunlight of Egypt, half echoing in the shadowed depths of the afterlife. But the goddess did not weep forever. Her sorrow turned to purpose, and purpose to destiny. Set's laughter still haunted the wind. His crime had not been forgotten, nor had his lust for power. Though Osiris now ruled below, Set seized the earth above. He declared himself master of Egypt, draping the throne in crimson banners and iron storms. The desert became his ally, and the fertile lands began to wither beneath his rage. Isis watched, silent and veiled, while the world trembled under Set's dominion. Yet in the quiet chambers of her exile, a secret began to grow within her, a spark left by Osiris's brief return. She felt it stir within her womb, not as a burden but as a flame. Life, once lost, had returned again. Horus, the child of prophecy, was stirring in the cradle of her divine body. Knowing that Set would stop at nothing to destroy what remained of Osiris's legacy, Isis fled into the marshes of the Nile Delta, far from the eyes of gods and men. There, hidden among the reeds, she gave birth to Horus under the light of the crescent moon. The air trembled with sacred energy as the newborn cried, its sound echoing across the realms, even to Duat, where Osiris heard and smiled. But the goddess's trials had only begun. Set's spies roamed the earth, sniffing out the scent of her child. The storms howled with his malice. Serpents crawled through the reeds. Scorpions slithered in the night. Yet nature itself rose to protect the divine mother. The marshes became her fortress. the crocodiles her guardians, and the stars her watchmen. By day, Isis would cradle her son beneath the shade of papyrus, whispering hymns of power that kept death at bay. By night, she wandered alone, gathering herbs and spells, calling upon the ancient magic of Thoth and the hidden wisdom of Ra. Her words wove the very fabric of protection. Her breath gave life to the first amulets of the Nile. From her hands came the art of healing. From her sorrow the birth of faith. Still, Set's vengeance was relentless. He unleashed venomous beasts and conjured spirits of sand to seek the child. One night, as the moon waned, a serpent struck. Its fangs sank into the infant Horus, and his cry shattered the stillness. Isis, in terror, clasped his tiny form and fell to her knees. The goddess who had resurrected Osiris now faced the death of her son, but her spirit did not break. She raised her voice to the heavens and called to Ra, the great sun god who had withdrawn from the world. Her words were not supplication, they were command, the cry of a mother whose will rivaled eternity. The sky itself paused, the river ceased its flow, and Ra, hearing the grief of Isis, sent forth his messenger Thoth, the god of wisdom and words. Thoth descended in a beam of golden light, bearing the knowledge of divine incantations. Together, he and Isis recited the words of life, weaving ancient power into sound. Their voices rose and fell like tides, echoing through the realms. The serpent's venom faltered, the child's breath returned, and the light of Horus's eyes flickered open once more. Thus the magic of healing was born, and Isis became known as Mistress of Spells, the healer of the gods. Years passed, and Horus grew beneath her vigilant gaze. He learned the ways of both heaven and earth, the wisdom of Osiris, the strength of his mother, and the cunning of Thoth. But as the boy matured into a falcon-eyed youth, Set's rule hardened into tyranny. The world groaned beneath his cruelty. Temples fell silent, and mortals forgot the hymns of the gods. The time for hiding was over. Isis looked upon her son and saw in him not only her beloved's face, but the hope of creation itself. She led him to the sacred temple where the winds whispered Osiris's name and spoke to him with the voice of destiny. "The blood of kings flows in your veins," she said. "You are the falcon of vengeance, the sky reborn in flesh. The throne of your father awaits but to claim it. You must confront the storm." Horus bowed his head, and in his eyes burned the dawn. Yet before he could challenge Set, he had to be tested by the gods themselves. The council of the divine, seated in the halls of Mat, summoned Horus and Set to plead their cases before Ra and Thoth. The air crackled with tension as heaven awaited judgment. For 80 long years, the trial raged. Set argued his right through conquest and fear. Horus claimed his through blood and justice. Isis stood beside her son, her presence radiant yet silent, her every glance a reminder of truth unspoken. Again and again, Set sought to deceive, to manipulate, to twist law into his favor. Yet Isis, with the wisdom of creation itself, outmatched him. Once, she even disguised herself as a beautiful maiden and approached Set on the road, pretending to seek his counsel. She spoke of 2 brothers, one murdered, one crowned unjustly, and asked what judgment would be fair. Set, unaware of her ruse, declared, the son of the murdered one must inherit his father's throne, with a smile as cold as moonlight. Isis revealed herself, and Set's roar split the heavens. The gods laughed, and for a time, justice seemed near. But even immortals are bound by pride, and Ra hesitated. The council fell into endless debate. Horus and Set battled in every form and beast, storm and shadow. They tore through mountains, split the sky, and churned the Nile with their wrath. The world became their battlefield, and the ages trembled beneath their struggle. In one fateful clash, Set tore out Horus's left eye, casting it into the river. The goddess of vengeance might have wept then, but Isis did not yield. She found the broken eye, bathed it in sacred oils, and called upon Thoth once more. With his help, she restored it, crafting the Eye of Horus, the symbol of protection and divine vision. It became a light against darkness, a charm against death, and a promise that truth would always be restored. Thus armed with the power of his mother's love and the wisdom of the gods, Horus rose again. His eyes shone like the moon over the Nile, his wings spread like dawn over the desert. When he faced Set once more, he carried not hatred, but justice. The thunder of their battle shook the foundations of heaven, but at last, Horus stood victorious. He ascended to his father's throne, crowned by Ra, while Set was cast into the burning sands, destined to wander in exile forever. And Isis, standing beside her son, felt the first peace she had known since the day her husband was slain. Yet even then, she did not forget mercy, for when Set, broken and humbled, came before her pleading for life, she did not strike him down. She remembered that vengeance is a flame that burns the hand which holds it. She turned away, leaving him to the desert and the silence he had sown. In that moment, the gods themselves bowed their heads, for Isis had done what even they could not. She had conquered wrath with compassion, and the world, seeing her example, began to understand the truest power of divinity. In the endless cycle of vengeance and rebirth, Isis stood not as destroyer, but as healer. She mended not only the body of Osiris, but the soul of the world. Her son avenged the father, yet it was the mother who restored the law of heaven. Thus the age of darkness ended not through war alone, but through the love of a goddess who refused to surrender to despair. And so, when the Nile rises and the moon ascends, her spirit moves in the waters forever, Mother, forever Queen, forever Isis. When the gods fell silent and the stars turned their gaze from earth, only one voice still dared to speak against the darkness. It was the voice of Isis the Mother, the Queen, the eternal heart of Egypt whose love had conquered death, and whose wisdom would reshape the heavens themselves. The war had ended, yet the echoes of divine struggle still haunted the earth. Horus now reigned upon the throne of his father, and Osiris ruled below in the silent fields of the blessed dead. The two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt, stood united once more, bound by blood, by memory, and by the tears of Isis. Yet peace is never eternal, even among gods. The age of battles had ended, but the age of remembrance had just begun. Isis, though crowned as queen among immortals, carried within her the unhealed wound of eternity. She had restored her husband, raised her son, and brought balance to the world, but the silence left by Osiris's absence weighed heavy upon her immortal soul. In every dawn, she saw his reflection in the golden light. In every dusk, she felt his shadow beneath the stars. The Nile whispered his name endlessly, as though the river itself could not forget. She wandered the temples of Egypt, clothed in linen white as moonlight, her presence like a fragrance that sanctified the air. The people knelt wherever she walked, for they saw in her not merely a goddess, but the embodiment of love that never perishes. Mothers prayed to her for children, healers for strength, kings for justice. To every prayer she listened, for Isis was not distant, she was the divine made tender. Yet even in her divinity, Isis felt the weight of time. She understood that the story of the gods was not only a tale of power, but of transformation. Creation itself was built on cycles: birth, death, and renewal, and even gods must yield to the rhythm of eternity. Each year, as the Nile rose, Isis performed the sacred rites of mourning for Osiris. She stood upon the river bank, spreading her wings wide, her chants carried by the wind. The waters swelled with her tears, flooding the land and feeding the soil. The people saw the rivers rise as her sorrow turned to blessing. Thus life returned from death, and Egypt's heart beat once more with the pulse of her devotion. In those days, her son Horus ruled with wisdom learned from her hand. He was brave and noble, yet his heart still bore the scars of his long war with Set. Often he would sit upon the palace terrace at twilight, gazing at the horizon where sky and sand met, seeking meaning in the endless expanse. Isis would stand beside him in silence until he spoke. "Mother," he would say, "the throne is mine, the world is whole, but why do I still feel the storm within?" And Isis would answer softly, "Because peace is not the end of struggle, my son, it is its transformation. The storm you feel is not war, it is memory, and memory is sacred, for through it the world remembers who it is." So Horus learned not to rule through conquest, but through harmony. He became the symbol of rightful kingship, and every pharaoh after him was said to be a living Horus's soul, reborn through the ages, guided by the unseen hand of Isis. But the goddess herself withdrew slowly from the courts of heaven. Her divine work was not finished, but it no longer belonged to the realm of kings. She wandered across the world as a silent protector, peering to sailors lost at sea, to mothers in childbirth, to lovers separated by fate. Wherever life trembled on the edge of despair, her unseen wings stirred the air, and hope returned. It is said that once, when the sun faltered in its course, and Ra's strength waned, Isis ascended to the very gates of the sky. She approached the aging god not as servant nor rival, but as equal. With gentle cunning, she asked his secret name, the name that held his essence, the word by which creation itself was bound. Ra hesitated, but pain weakened him, and the goddess spoke her magic until the truth was revealed. With his secret name upon her tongue, Isis did not seek to overthrow him. Instead, she healed him, restoring his light and balance. Yet in doing so, she became the first to understand the hidden power of names, the mystery that all creation is shaped by the words that define it. From that day, the priests of Egypt invoked her in every ritual, for she had learned the language of the gods themselves. Time passed, and mortals built temples in her honor. From Philae to Thebes, from Memphis to the islands of the Mediterranean, her image, rose-wings spread wide, thrown upon her brow, the ankh of life in her hand. Sailors called her Queen of the Sea, mothers called her Lady of Compassion, the wise called her the One Who Knows. Even foreign lands, Greece, Rome, and beyond, took her name upon their lips. Isis became not just a goddess of Egypt, but a mother to all humankind. Yet for all her worship, she remained humbler presence of quiet strength. Her divinity was not in lightning or thunder, but in the simple miracle of love that endures. She was the breath in the lungs of the dying, the comfort in the heart of the grieving, the whisper that says, "Rise, for even death cannot hold you." In the twilight of the ancient world, when new gods rose and old temples fell to ruin, the memory of Isis did not fade. Her statues were buried beneath the sands, but her name endured upon the wind. In every story of a mother's sacrifice, in every tale of faith that defies death, her spirit lingered. She was reborn in countless forms, beneath countless names: Ishtar, Inanna, Mary, each echoing the eternal promise she first made when she knelt beside Osiris's body, that love is stronger than death. Even now, when the moonlight ripples across the Nile, the faithful say they can see her reflection upon the water, her face serene, her eyes sorrowful yet full of endless grace. The reeds bend as though bowing to her passing, and the river murmurs her name. And perhaps, in that shimmering reflection, Osiris watches still from his throne beneath the earth, where the fields of eternity bloom forever in green light. The two are never truly apart, for every dawn that rises is his resurrection, and every night that falls is her vigil. Together they are the eternal rhythm of life and death, of seed and harvest, of loss and renewal. Thus, the myth of Isis and Osiris became not merely a tale of gods, but the mirror of the human soul. For in each heart lies a fragment of that divine story, the pain of loss, the courage to rebuild, the faith to love again. And in the endless passage of time, when empires crumble and stars fade, her name endures, a whisper between worlds, a mother's call that echoes across eternity. Rise, for love never dies. From the tears of Isis, the Nile was born. From her faith, the dead found life. From her sorrow, the world learned compassion. And though the temples have turned to dust, her legend still breathes within us all. For the heart of Isis is the heart of creation, the promise that every ending hides the seed of beginning. And as long as the river flows, her wings will never close. Thus ends the tale of Isis, the goddess who rebuilt her husband's body, the mother who healed the world, the eternal soul of Egypt. In her, love became divine.